You're listening to the Southampton Delivery Podcast, a podcast dedicated to the Southampton Football Club and all of the SFC fans.
If you want to have guarantees, you have to buy a washing machine.
Monte with a scooping header.
We don't lose a match, either we win or we learn. And today we learned.
Отдача, Остин! Все-таки забил!
It's infield to Mane, 25 yards out. Lovely ball for Bella. Onside, 1-0. Buffon shot! Oh my word!
Unbelievable. He ran around the pitch like Bambi on ice. It was very, very embarrassing to watch.
And now, your host, Matt Markstone.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Southampton Delivery Podcast, a podcast and newsletter dedicated to the Southampton Football Club and all of the SFC fans, and available right here on southamptondelivery.com. My name is Matt Markstone. I am the host of the show, and no matter where you are, no matter how you may be listening, whether this is your first time or you've been here before, whether you are excited for the start of the Premier League season or you were disappointed and upset because for some reason our kits still haven't been released, we didn't sign that center back, and for some reason the first team assistant coach has left the building, we are here for you. And this week on episode 134 of the show, this is the final episode before the start of the season. The Premier League transfer window is just days away from closing. The start of the season just a few days away as well. And we are here for you. So on this week's episode, I talked to 4 different voices to get their ideas on how the season looks. So first up, we talked to Lucy Highnett, then Jake Hughes of St. Mary's Musings, Rob Brown, who is out of Canada and who won the Total Saints podcast Fantasy Premier League last year. We talk a little bit about that as well. And Luke Osman, and you can get a hold of them all on Twitter. Their handles will be mentioned as we move through the show, and they are all available in the links below. I should also mention that Lucy is now the newest panel member of the Total Saints podcast. So a lot of overlap between the podcasts, but here we go and give you some idea as to what's going to happen or what we think is going to happen over the course of the season. So a few things you should know is that I am away right now, even as you're possibly listening to this. So all of these were recorded last week. So all of them except for Luke were recorded at the very end of July. Luke was recorded on the 1st of August. It was put together, set up for you guys to hear. And then I went with my family to the mountains because my summer vacation is over. So I am away enjoying the last few days of that. And we have this, and I will come back to the Premier League and then go back to school. And honestly, I couldn't be happier. So thank you all for listening. If you haven't done so, subscribe. But really, just enjoy the show and have a nice day. I'd like to welcome back to the Southampton Delivery Podcast, Lucy Highnett. You can find her on Twitter at Lucy Highnett, and you can get her, I guess, in your ears more often as she is the newest member of the Total Saints podcast panel. Is that how you guys do it?
Yeah, I think that's what we describe ourselves as a panel. Yeah, I think now there are more than 2 of them. You kind of have to have a panel, don't you?
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well,
looking forward to it.
Yeah. Well, congratulations for committing to a season of making sure you have to talk about everything that happens at the club from here until the end of time. I hope you enjoy it.
I love how it started as a season and is now until the end of time. Yeah, I think I'm feeling really excited about it now. I mean, you might have to ask me again at Christmas and we'll see how I am. But no, I'm looking forward to it. Chatting through with people that, have interesting opinions and kind of well-informed ideas. So yeah. Yeah,
I mean, high-level discourse is hard to come by in every day-to-day life, I think. I remember as a teacher hoping I was going to get that in the classroom and just being sorely disappointed for the first 6 years of my life and just going like, maybe not. Maybe I'll find it elsewhere. So luckily, after 10 years of marriage, I think I found some of it. So that's good. Not football related, but good. So people can get you on there. They are at Total Saints Podcast or at Total Saints Pod on Twitter. And the link to the podcast is in the show notes. Although I'm almost certain that if you're listening to this, you also listen to that. So there we go. But we're talking early in the window. We still have a preseason match to go. Still have just under a week, or I guess a week and a half of the window left open. So we'll just kind of run through some of this stuff, and then we'll see how it goes, and we'll talk to a number of different people over the course of the show. So, I mean, for you so far during preseason, I guess what has impressed you the most, or what stood out to you the most as a positive for Saints thus far?
I think it's been really well managed in the sense that, like last summer, we had this kind of weird China trip to manage in between kind of the more conventional preparation. And I think the fact that Hasenhuttl was like, yeah, it's not going to work very well for me doing that. You know, there's a lot of flying around to different camps and such. So it would be better if I just kind of, I'm not going to say write off the China trip, because that sounds kind of disrespectful to kind of our kind of obligations in terms of kind of commercial viewing. But like, I think it was a way of kind of managing the situation, having a look at kind of younger players that don't always kind of have much enough of an opportunity in the first team, allowed him to look at them, but also kind of meant that he could look after players, kind of maintain fitness levels. I think the fitness levels this summer look really good. I mean, I'm not kind of an expert and I don't have insight into kind of tests and whatever, but they all look like in really good condition. They look like they can kind of execute the high press really well. I think the game against Feyenoord kind of showed how good they've got that high press. I think Yannick Vestergaard said the problem was that Feyenoord kind of worked around it and then we looked quite exposed. But I thought in terms of kind of the energy, I thought it was really good. And I think you kind of only get that kind of good conditioning when you are kind of savvy about how you manage the fixtures, if you're going to have kind of these other kind of trips to deal with, I guess.
Yeah, I think the fitness is a huge part of Ralph's game and what the guys are going to need to be able to do, given the type of football that Ralph wants to play. I did see stuff about Feyenoord working through it a little bit and then kind of I guess running through the midfield, because playing the 3-5-2, you leave yourself a little bit exposed in midfield, but that's all stuff that we have to work on. And it came out today, I think, that Romeu was injured. So he wasn't in there to kind of be selected anyway. So we'll kind of have to see how it goes. But given that that's basically, it's all been pretty positive, is there anything that concerns you about the club as the season approaches?
I think it's the general point that I think many people will have pointed out, that we just haven't got the people out that we needed to. It's quite clear that this club relies on selling players to buy players. And as it stands, we've got rid of 3 players that I think wouldn't have been seen as kind of massive priorities. I think kind of Classy, we all thought would leave, but wasn't ever going to yield much in terms of fee. Gallagher likely thought he would leave, but again, wasn't on particularly high wages, wasn't going to yield a massive fee. And then kind of Target, who hasn't really had the opportunities to kind of push on, and it kind of made a lot of sense from his point of view as much as it did from our point of view. But they kind of weren't the players that I'm thinking kind of like Hoot, Cedric, those kind of players that we kind of thought, those probably need to go. And while I kind of was realistic about how many we could get rid of, I kind of assumed by this point there would be more than there has been.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's kind of Lamina and Austin issues that have kind of been bubbling under the surface, but they don't seem to be on the way yet. And I kind of think that whole kind of logjam is meaning that we're not really kind of getting the squad together as kind of Ralph would have wanted, especially the lack of a centre-back, which I think the club have identified as a priority, and I think most fans are aware is a priority, given the kind of number of late goals we conceded last season and the problems that provided. So I think the main kind of lack of kind of any kind of cycle to the transfer window, it's all kind of ground to a halt. And I think especially when you're implementing a style of play like Hasenhuttl does that isn't kind of typical of a lot of Premier League teams, as much time as possible would have been really important. Mm-hmm. And I think that will be a concern for everyone. And I think it's now a point where we're desperately hoping there's 1 or 2 players in and 1 or 2 players out, whereas I would imagine they thought that they would be getting 4 or 5 out, because he's gone consistently on about this kind of smaller squad and there isn't really one there.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you mentioned like, getting rid of Targett and Gallagher. Like those are guys that you would have thought maybe not necessarily fit Ralph's system, but just the age profile and maybe they stick around and we see some of these older guys go, but those older guys are on such wages that maybe it just doesn't make sense. And I was actually pretty pleased with the size of the fee that we were able to get for Targett. I thought that was quite a bit. That was not what I was expecting. So I think that's a good, maybe a good bit of business. I was a little bit disappointed that although he was out in the United States, he didn't come close enough to me to be able to see him and watch him, whip crosses in or whatever he was doing for Aston Villa. But based on that, if you were going to kind of give if the window closed right now, which is this is Monday evening, Monday night for you, the window closed right now, what rating 1 to 10 would you give the club?
It's difficult. I want to kind of give them quite a low rating, but I'm kind of aware that a lot of the problems we're having now are the results of kind of poor windows in the past, and this is kind of like the way it's caught up with us. Mm-hmm. So I think people would look at it on paper and say, well, we haven't got the players in that we needed, we haven't got the players out that we needed, but in a sense they're kind of victims of kind of market conditions. I think every club in the Premier League is struggling to get as much business done as they normally would. I think, you look at teams like Man United who have kind of an upscaled version of our problem in the sense they have a lot of players on high wages they can't really get rid of. And I think teams like Aston Villa who have spent ridiculous amounts of money on not always that great players. But I won't go into that because apparently you get absolutely mobbed on Twitter if you say that. I think they're quite an unusual example. I think the majority of teams haven't actually done that much business.
Right.
And I think it's generally been quite a slow moving market in that sense. And I think for some of the players we're looking to sell, selling into the Premier League would have been kind of an obvious option. I'm thinking kind of like Austin. I think Lemina's been linked to a couple of Premier League clubs now, and there are others that maybe would have been kind of Premier League targets. So I want to kind of hammer them, but I feel like it's kind of the result of a succession of problems. That said, I think there needs to be a centre-back, and they're desperate. Like, I don't care what happens to get that centre-back, but it kind of needs to happen. Mm-hmm. And until it does, I think a 6.5, okay. Maybe.
That's not too bad.
Yeah, I'm thinking like Adams was the big target of the window. Well, the big target of last window also, but the big target of the window, and they got it done. And I think Djenepo is the kind of type of player that makes a lot of sense for what we need in terms of pace and skill and the kind of dynamic player we don't actually have that much of. Yeah. So I think like those two signings are really exciting. They're just not really enough on their own. So yeah, I think something around there.
All right. Based on who we have now, and of course somebody could come in by the end of the window and upend this a little bit, but based on who we have right now, I guess what player do you think really needs to have a kind of a standout year, maybe a breakout year, or maybe I guess similar to Redmond, how Redmond kind of emerged last year and kind of took that next step in development. Who do we need to kind of look at and hope will break out this year or really stand out in order for us to be successful?
I think, bearing in mind, I am increasingly sceptical that we will get that centre back. I think Jan Bednarek, who I think was really good last season, I think he needs to kind of mature even further. Last season was like an incredible year for his development, and I think he surpassed expectations even after kind of that little spell he had under Hughes at the end of the 17-18 season. I think even then he'd kind of surprised people, especially after he had to kind of fight his way back in. But I think he needs to kind of go up the next level, kind of the next notch in his career. I think there are certain players in that defence that aren't going to get any better. I think, Yoshida's been kind of amazing servant for the club. Mm-hmm. But I think at the age he isn't going to get any better. I think we've had kind of the best of him. I think for Stevens and Hoot, they have shown their limitations, and I don't think they're limitations that are going to kind of become less of an issue. So I think kind of Bednarek and Vestergaard have to have really impressive seasons, I think, if we're going to kind of move on from the kind of crazy fragility we showed at points last season, even when kind of Ralph had it going as he wanted. You couldn't doubt that there were massive defensive problems.
Sure. Yeah, without a new center back, I guess if you were going to play a back four, we'll get to that because you're going to give me the opening day starting lineup, so I'll let you mull that over. But just a couple more questions here. What would be successful for the team, and whether that means a place on the table at the end of the season, a run in the cup, just more exciting football? What would be success for Saints this season?
I think success is kind of playing the right style of football, kind of moving on with what Ralph wants to do. I think there were times when we got it working really well at the end of last season, but there were also times where things clearly didn't go to plan. And I think we actually finished with fewer points than I actually thought we would. Kind of 4 or 5 games to go, it kind of tailed off a bit. So I think we'll a kind of successful season is seeing Ralph's football kind of go to the next level, become a more coherent, consistent thing. And I think overall, apart from kind of a style of play thing, is Saints fans being able to kind of enjoy the season without looking over their shoulders all the time, without kind of worrying about the relegation zone, how many points we've got, if we've kind of moved on enough. And I kind of want to be able to look up the table. I don't think that necessarily means being in the top half or kind of being even in the top 12, but just having that feeling of kind of positivity around the club that I think probably Ralph helped to instill at the end of last season, but kind of there were still those nerves around, kind of quite understandably, because of the relegation situation. Yeah,
absolutely. I think it's a good way to look at it, and I hope you're correct. All right, if you could predict now for me your top goal scorer, the couple of categories. So top goal scorer, highest number of assists, most minutes played, and most yellow cards. I don't know why the yellow card one's in there, but I like that. So who do you think will be our top scorer?
I'm going to get really sucked into the hype, and I'm going to say Adams.
Okay.
Just because I think Ings and Adams will have a good thing going, hopefully. But Ings' injury record still I find quite off-putting, and I would still expect him to kind of be managed quite carefully. I think Hasenhuttl learned kind of from that injury spell he had that there are certain demands you can't put on Danny Ings' body reasonably, such as when we have 2 games in a week or whatever, there are certain limitations to him. So I think he'll have to be a bit more carefully managed than Adams, who's clearly going to have a lot of energy and a lot of fitness kind of in his favour.
Yeah, and it's nice with Djenepo coming in, we'll see, and with Buffon and everything else, we'll see who and who shifts around and who moves when Ings has to come off at maybe 70 minutes or 75 minutes. And I think there's a lot of options up front now, attacking wise, that we can utilize. So I'm excited to see how that all works, and hopefully we get to see lots and lots of pressing and attacking, and even late in games, which is not really what we did last year. So Adams to be top scorer. What about number of assists? Who has the most?
I'm going to go with Redmond, I think. But I don't really see us having a kind of natural assister in the sense that some Premier League teams will have, your Madisons and your... I mean, I was about to say Ozil, but that's a really terrible example. But, those kind of like... those kind of like creative 10 types, those people that are kind of will put off a shot so that they can pass, that kind of thing. I don't think we really have one of those kinds of players, so it's quite difficult to pick that out. And I also think Ward-Prowse is probably the closest we have to that, and I'm still not quite sure how he fits in now that Adams has arrived, because that kind of means that we've got one fewer attacking spot, and I'm not really sure kind of how that all fits together yet. So that's kind of what I'm looking for that kind of last pre-season game, is kind of how he fits it all together. Because as far as I can tell, someone's going to have to drop out. And Ward-Prowse on paper, to me, despite being really good last season, is the kind of least natural fit to what Hasenhuttl was trying to do in terms of pace, intensity, high pressing, which I think Ward-Prowse did really well to kind of push as far as he could. But I'm still kind of not sure if it's really for him from the start, kind of thing.
I mean, I, as a teacher and as a parent, I encourage my kids, push yourself, do everything you can. Good things will happen. Unless you're James Ward-Prowse, then you push yourself, do everything you can. You still can't get in the team. So we'll see. Because I tend to agree with you, and I hate to say it out loud, but it's if you had to pick one of those guys to drop out, a lot of people maybe say then Romeu doesn't play, and you just play Ward-Prowse next to Højbjerg. But we will see. We will see how it all unfolds. And with Romeu, I guess injured right now, I guess maybe that'll take some of that decision away from Ralph for now. But who do you think plays the most minutes for the team this season? There's an easy out if you say Angus Gunn potentially, but we'll say outfield players only.
Oh, okay. I'll go with Jan Bednarek. I think defenders tend to get rotated the least, and I can't see a situation where he has any kind of problems with fitness or anything.
Yeah. Okay.
So I guess him.
All right, and then highest number of yellow cards.
It's got to be Romeu. He loves a booking. I think he even plays better with a booking. So I think in a way he aims for one.
Yeah, get it early. And then, hey, when he gets the yellow card suspension, then Ward-Prowse can play. Yeah,
all sorted. I'm sure that's what James Ward-Prowse wants to base his career on. Romeu suspension.
I play when other people mess up. That's my job. Just can you, if you could look forward to Burnley now. I realize you are doing this the earliest of any of the people we have on the show this week. But if you could look forward and give me your starting lineup for Burnley, how would you line everybody up?
I think, assuming there isn't another centre back, I don't see a scenario where we look particularly stable with the 4-2-2-2 that I think Ralph was particularly keen to play. For me, I think that's going to cause too many problems. I don't think there's a natural pairing at the back, really. So I think that means that I'd go for 3 centre-backs. So I'd have Gunn in goal, Bednarek, Yoshida and Vestergaard. Wing-backs of Bertrand and Valerie. Central midfield, I mean, you did pick up on the idea that lots of people have said that you could play Ward-Prowse and Højbjerg in the middle. I'm kind of a little bit reluctant to go with that, just because I think they might get a little bit overrun in the middle there.
Yeah.
So I would play Romeu if he's fit. I don't know how long his injury is at the moment, but it would be Højbjerg and Romeu in the middle, and then a kind of front 3. But I'm not really sure how the 3 would work. But kind of Redmond, Ings, and Adams. I don't know whether that would be kind of Redmond behind Ings and Adams, or whether it would be kind of a more traditional 3 with Adams on the right and Redmond on the left. Mm-hmm. But some kind of iteration of that.
Yeah, and based on that, I think what we've seen from Ings as well is he doesn't mind dropping a little deeper either. And you could have a situation where him and Redmond are kind of rotating in behind the other 2. But we'll just have to see. I think the fluidity up front, if you look at some of the other teams that are pretty decent in attack, think of Liverpool, think of even Man City, like those guys tend to rotate in and out throughout the game and cause people trouble. And I'm not saying we're at that level, but it might be nice to just watch and see how it goes. But yeah,
I think,
go ahead.
Oh, sorry.
No.
I was about to say, I think Ings reminds me in many ways of the way kind of Firmino plays for Liverpool, in the sense that he kind of drops in, does quite a lot of like harrowing on the ball, tries to get the ball back, kind of lets the play pivot round him, kind of thing, like Firmino does.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think there are kind of parallels between us and Liverpool, as much as we're not that good, and also I don't really like mentioning us and Liverpool, but
yeah.
there are kind of similarities, I think.
Well, maybe in a couple of years, Charlie Austin will be wearing a Danny Ings shirt around, but maybe not. I don't know. We'll see.
He certainly won't be on Twitter with it, will he?
Well, you never know. That guy. Well, his account, did his wife give him his account back, or whoever took it from him? I don't know.
I don't know what happened there, but
it was a weird day. It was a weird morning for me. just you guys are in the middle of looking for a house, you and your husband. Your husband is a Newcastle fan, so this is not on the list of questions I sent you. But if you had to choose either Steve Bruce or Ralph Hasenhuttl to help build your house, who would you have kind of oversee the project?
Ralph Hasenhuttl.
Okay.
I guess.
Yeah.
Although, would that mean he had to stop managing Saints? Because I think we do everyone a favour if we made Steve Bruce manage our teams, build a house so we didn't have to manage any of our teams. That would be my thinking. Distract him and then get someone else in, maybe.
That might be doing your husband a huge favor. And the rest of the world, because we're going to have to watch it at some point.
That's what I'm thinking. A lot of grateful Geordies, I feel, if we did that way.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I'd see either of them as builders, really. I mean, I suppose Hasenhuttl kind of builds a team, but I'm not sure how good he'd be with, manual labour.
Yeah, I was just thinking, if he's overseeing the project, maybe
kind of a project manager type role.
Yeah.
Yeah, rather than actually, physically building.
Yeah, no, he doesn't actually have to physically.
Oh, okay.
Hammer the stuff.
Yeah, then definitely Ralph. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because otherwise, if Bruce did it, it might be so slow that you might just never get it done. Although, and the guys would probably hate their job, so you don't want that. As somebody who's done manual labor, it's nice to have a good boss who makes you enjoy working, because you do a better job, I think. But
to be fair to Steve Bruce, he does strike me as quite nice, just not very good.
I just have one interview in yeah, you're right. He does seem like a nice, jovial kind of fella, but just not super enjoyable to watch the teams that he's managed in the past. And maybe we'll all be proven wrong, and maybe it'll be a fine season for them, but I kind of hope not. But anyway, all right. Well,
I won't let Tom hear that.
No, yeah, I don't. I mean, nothing against them. Just I want to finish above them. That's all.
Okay, we can settle for that. Maybe we can have a good season, but they can have a not quite as good season.
Right. Absolutely. Okay. Well, Lucy, is there anything else that you like to say? I promised to take up only a short amount of time, and I've gone over, and I apologize.
No, that's it. That sounds good.
All right. Well, people can hear more from you on Twitter at Lucy Highnett. And then, of course, they can hear more from you on the Total Saints podcast, which is at Total Saints Pod on Twitter. And the link to the to the SoundCloud and iTunes and all that stuff is in the show notes, so people can get that there. Lucy, thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate it. And have a good night.
Yeah, you too. Thanks for having me on.
I'd like to welcome back to the Southampton Delivery Podcast, Jake Hughes. You can find him on Twitter at JJHughes_, and you get a lot more from him at St. Mary's Musings. So, Jake, welcome back, and thanks for doing the season preview in a kind of a crazy time for work and everything else.
No, thank you for having me. It's always great talking to you, Matt, and previewing the Southampton season, which hopefully will be more positive than the last 2 or 3 we've had.
I hope you're right. I have a hard time believing that it won't be, but we will see. We will have to wait and see. There was the news released this morning. We're talking on is it Thursday? It's Wednesday afternoon, or evening, your time, nighttime. That Danny Roll has left the club. So that is interesting, but we'll have to wait and see. We don't really know all the details yet. Even from Adam Leach's reporting, there was nothing, no firm details there. So we'll see how that plays out. But that being said, we're talking Wednesday, so there's still time left in the window. And we still have a preseason match left to go, so things could change. But we'll do our best to kind of run it down. And I mean, Jake, just for anybody who's not yet familiar with St. Mary's Musings, what can people expect if they go to the site, and what's the best way to get in contact with you if they're looking to do that?
So the website is always try to position it as a website for all kinds of opinions on Southampton, positive, negative, hopefully not very controversial, but I've been told otherwise before. If you ever want to get in touch with me, it's probably best reaching out to either the St. Mary's Musings Twitter account or my personal Twitter account, which you kindly read out as you introduced me. Hopefully, so I have something to admit this season. This is the first season in a very long time where I do not have a season ticket. I heard you there. Basically, last season I was so close to not renewing, and with 15 minutes before the deadline of midnight on a Friday night, I caved in. The guilt was too much. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, I couldn't go to as many games with all of the freelance work I do. So the midweek games, games on a Sunday, just found it hard going and justifying spending so much money. So I actually have a little bit more free time on my hands. So I'm hoping to do more on the website. Now I'll be watching from afar. Luckily, I can still go to some away games and I can cherry pick what home games I go to. So I do hope to be down at St. Mary's plenty. But it's weird. Even though it's the most optimistic I've been ahead of a Saints season for a long time, I'm actually relishing the thought of having a bit more free time and not having the guilt of wasting money on a season ticket that's not being used.
Yeah, I think that's good. I think, and otherwise when they're playing, you can't make it, then you have a weird feeling about it anyway. So now that you're just going to enjoy watching them and maybe be able to maybe write a little bit more or do whatever it is you want. Like that, I think that's all good. I think it's a very adult decision. So,
yeah, no, tell me about it. I mean, I bought a season ticket last year. Well, I renewed mine in block 42, and unfortunately, I think I only managed to make 5 home games. So I don't want to do the maths and work out how much I spent per home ticket. But yeah, it's not worth the money. Although I have kindly had numerous calls from the club asking me why I haven't renewed and trying to put more pressure on me to renew. It's very considerate of them, but I have held firm this summer.
Yeah, I don't do well in those situations. I caved way too much stuff, or just give away way too much of my time.
But if anything, it really annoyed me. So it made me more, especially as I was so annoyed at myself for caving in last year. I was absolutely determined not to do the same this year. So if anything, it just made me more happy in my decision in some weird, petty way, as if I'm winning. It'll be weird not having a season ticket, and I hope one day I'll be able to actually get my seat back.
Yeah.
But for now, I will be watching most games on some dodgy stream somewhere.
I'm sorry. I wound up contributing money on a monthly basis to my former university. One night I had drank probably too much, was laying on the couch kind of at not an appropriate time to be passed out on the couch after having drinks. Phone rings. I don't recognize the number. I answer it. It's somebody from the university who's calling, and they're telling me this lovely story about how they are at school and they're really enjoying it, and they're from Southern California. I was like, oh, so we're talking because we're from not the same area, but close enough, and having never been there before and all this stuff. Then I found out they played sports, and I was like, oh, all this stuff. And at the end, they're like, so I have to ask you, do you want to contribute? And I was like, yeah, that sounds great.
God.
And the surprise in their voice was like, you're the first person to say yes. And I was like, what have I done? And now every month, when it comes out of my account, I was like, damn it, here we go. And my credit card was going to expire, in 2 months. And so I said, I don't have the new one yet, but give me the number and I'll call back and I'll give you the updated information. And then I did. And I was like, what am I doing with my life? I'm just willingly doing this, but whatever. It's
I fear for you putting this out on the internet, because you're now going to be targeted by charities, fundraisers, all kinds of things. I know you're an easy mark.
Yeah, it's okay. It's all right. If you look, I'm a sucker to retweet any of that stuff too, which is I don't care. Bring it. It's about spreading the good things around the world, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah, at least you're funding positive things.
Yeah. If you want me to fund some black market drug smuggling scheme, I'm not your guy. I'm not that. I'm not
That's
that much
good
of a
to
risk.
know. I was thinking of setting that up with my newfound free time. So I won't bother you with that now.
Okay. Well, we'll talk off the record. We'll see.
Yeah.
Maybe we can engineer a move for some of these players out of the club, and if that's the case, I'm in.
Yeah, definitely.
But let's work towards that. Maybe we'll work this in here. I mean, granted, we still have a preseason game left. There's still time in the window, but I guess what have you been most impressed by this preseason? In the first kind of preseason under Ralph.
So I was initially impressed by Southampton getting their early transfer dealings in. Quite a few times I feel like we've been a bit slow to pull the trigger on a few signings, and you sort of wait until around this period, sort of mid to late July, until you start seeing some activity. Obviously, that's since stalled. I'll get onto that soon. But yeah, obviously it seems like we're struggling to get rid of some of the players that we want to offload. But that's another thing that I am impressed by with Ralph, is that he's made it very clear he wants certain players out. And on the flip side, he's actually welcomed back some players where he's recognised we've obviously got some shortfallings in our squad, and it would be counterproductive to offload them unless we bring in cover. So with Sofiane Boufal, who I think he does genuinely want to stay, whereas the likes of Cedric and Wesley Hoot, I think they're kind of placeholders until we can sell some of the others and then look to get rid of them if we buy replacements. So that's been impressive. And it's I think just his communication even to Southampton fans and the public in making that known is positive. I can't remember the last time we've had a manager who's been so forthright in things such as like transfer dealings. I don't recall Koeman being like that. You'd always hear rumours of him falling out with players or wanting to get rid of some, but you don't actually hear it from him. Whereas Hasenhuttl made it very clear himself. Obviously, that's rubbed Charlie Austin up the wrong way. But who cares? Who cares about that apart from the Austin family? Another thing I have been impressed by is, and this is purely from what you see on social media and everything else. So, but it does look like he seems to be working the players hard pre-season. I think obviously the style of football we play underneath him is quite physically demanding. So I'm hoping we'll see the fittest Southampton squad we've seen since Pochettino was in charge. Yeah,
that's a point that Lucy made, is that everybody seems to be in pretty good physical shape. Like the guys look like they're fitter, and of course we'll see how it holds up over the course of the season.
Yeah,
but it's I think it's good. You mentioned a little bit that some guys are. That I guess the transfers have kind of stalled now after getting the early kind of work done. Classy did leave, but there hasn't been a whole lot of solid reports of guys having real solid interest anywhere else. But is that a concern to you, or is there anything that is concerning you about the club as the season approaches?
Yeah, I mean the Southampton defence is still a major concern. Obviously, the 3 players we have signed, Ings was made permanent. Gineppo, I'm not 100% sure how to pronounce his name just yet, as well as Che Adams, all attacking players, which we do need, but I think the pressing concern is always our defence, and it appears that we can't bolster that unless these players do move. Charlie Austin, Southampton fans are obviously fed up with him at this point. Maybe some are a little over the top in how much they seem to dislike him now. But he needs to go. And if the rumours are true that he's rejecting moves down a division, that's obviously not a great thing for our club. It's also not great to keep him around if he's going to continue to cause problems behind the scenes. Lamina has made it clear that he wants to leave, and we seem to be happy to get rid of him too. I read today that Everton look like they have at least made contact with Southampton to buy him, which is good news if that does happen. Hopefully we get a good enough fee to bring in some more players. So yeah, I guess the concern is that we've got a little over a week now left of the transfer window. I'd hate for us to keep waiting until those players, hoping those players move on and they don't, and then we just sort of we get left short in defence ahead of the new season. That is a concern. I'm hoping we have made contact with some clubs, at least put some feelers out there in the meantime. Mm-hmm. And judging by how efficient we were early in the transfer window, I'm pretty much expecting that to be the case, but that all remains to be seen. But as it stands, the defence is a concern.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't think you're definitely not the only person who feels that way. And I'm sure that's echoed on Twitter and by the other people that have been on the show and that we'll hear from in future segments, I guess, of this week's show as well. So, running through a couple of questions, kind of not quite rapid fire, but more along those lines. If the window closed today, what rating would you give the club of 1 through 10?
This is quite a tough one. I think I'll go for a 5 out of 10. So it's not awful, not great, but that's with an expectation that it should change to be a slightly higher score. I'm not going to go crazy and say be a 9 or 10 out of 10. Maybe that's for something to look back on later on in the season. But sure. I think 5 out of 10 so far. From the new signings we have made, I do like what I see so far, but much more needs to be done.
Okay. Which player, I guess, are we relying on this season? And I'll just say when I was writing this question, I was thinking more of like the breakout year that Nathan Redmond had last year really helped us play. I think it helped us to where we were. He was the kind of and sometimes the driving force of positivity, I guess, until Hasenhuttl got there, and then Hasenhuttl was kind of that for everybody. But thinking of a player along those lines, like which player in the squad do you think needs to have a good season in order for us to be successful?
It's quite another tough question. Can I say the defence as a whole?
Okay. Yeah.
It's a bit of a cop-out.
No, I think it's
okay.
Fine.
Besides the defence as a whole, I think, Redmond's definitely a good shout. I also think Danny Ings staying fit would be very important for our success in the next season. Again, it looks like he's really put in the work, even outside of our pre-season training camp, to make sure he's in his best physical shape ahead of even the training camp. He brings obviously he wasn't setting goal records last season, but his wider play, hold up play, he's a good passer of the ball. I think he would be really, really important for us. So hopefully he can stay fit, and I think he seems to be linking up quite well with Che Adams so far. So I think he'll be important.
Yeah. Okay. I like that. I was going to say he was out in LA doing his training and was not far from me, and I had to resist. Him and Redmond were both pretty close for portions, and I had to resist the urge to just kind of pop up in the stand and say, "Hi guys, how are you?" Because that would have been super weird.
I believe they out there with Sturridge.
Yes.
And he got his dog stolen.
Got it back though.
Yeah, that wasn't you, was it?
It was not me. If I would have stolen from a Liverpool player, I would not have given it back.
Yeah. Okay. You are innocent.
Unless maybe I have that whole black market thing really going. Like maybe it's all a front.
Yeah.
But no.
Makes sense.
It's I have been to that campus and been there and seen it and was like, oh, I know exactly where they're at, like, and then it was just like, you are 33 years old. Do not do this. I guess what would you consider success this year for Saints? Like what has to happen for the team to be able to look back and say, yep, that was a good season?
Honestly, all I want is for almost like a fresh start. So I want us to start the trend we were on, where we just had a season of continuous improvement. I want us to finish above 17th this season, And then the next season, I want us to finish above wherever we finish. I think Saints fans should be realistic. I think people are right to be excited because Ralph Hasenhuttl is a manager that, he warrants that excitement considering the absolute we've had the last few seasons. I think it's warranted to be optimistic, but I take any position which doesn't see us involved in a relegation dogfight. 16th or above, I'd be happy with. I just don't want us to be caught up in any relegation fight this season.
Okay, yeah, I think that's fair. All right, so now just name a player here. Who do you think is going to be our top goal scorer?
Che Adams.
All right. Who do you think is going to have the most assists this season?
Danny Ings, if he stays fit.
Ooh, always a question. Most minutes played, outfield players only.
I'm going for Højbjerg.
The engine. And who do you think will have the most yellow cards?
An easy one. Even if he plays 10 games this season, I think Oriol Romeu will be the man with the most yellow cards. With 10 in 10 games.
Yeah, it's hard to imagine anybody else doing it. We'll have to see.
I hope you collate these results and then we can assess them.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely keeping notes here.
Yeah,
I will lose it by the end of the season, but they're down. And then give me your opening day starting lineup, assuming, I guess, it could change based on if we bring somebody in, although it's hard to imagine Ralph bringing somebody in now this late in the window and then making him start on Saturday. But based on what you've seen, who do you give us your starting lineup for Burnley away?
It's quite boring, but I'll give it a go. So Gunn in goal, Valerie at right back with Bednarek and Yoshida at centre half, with Bertrand on the left. In midfield, Romeu sitting deeper with Ward-Prowse and Højbjerg either side of him. And in attack, Redmond on the left. I think Adams in the middle, interchanging with Ings on the right.
All right, there we go. Yeah, I mean, Jake, thanks for doing this.
Thank you.
Yeah. Anything else you want to add before we go?
Nothing really. As I said, I am cautiously optimistic. And that's obviously relative to how bad everything has been the last few seasons. As long as we can see noticeable progress over a full season rather than the time Hasenhuttl had from December to May, I think that's a win for us. And I look forward to seeing what Hasenhuttl also does in terms of bringing through some of our younger players. If the pre-season games are anything to go by, which obviously usually they're not, looks like we could be in for seeing some new names come up from the academy, which is always exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I try to force myself to be optimistic all the time, and I'm doing it again, but I almost don't feel like I'm forcing myself this year. Like, I feel like it's the real thing. So I think it's good. But we have you lined up to come on the show a little later in the season. So I'm looking forward to that. And I hope everything is well with you until then.
Thank you. You too. I know you've got a little break coming up this weekend, so make sure you enjoy that and rest up ahead of what will be a busy year of football once again.
Absolutely.
And I look forward to talking to you again.
My only concern for this weekend is I have a strict rule where I don't drink Coors Light, which is not a great beer, but I don't drink Coors Light unless it's over 90 degrees. So I need the weather to do me a favor and get hot, so I can do that and feel and it'll make my weekend a lot cheaper unless I have to buy all this craft beer stuff. So we will see. But if you want to get in touch with you, they can do that on Twitter at JJHughes_. They can also get in touch with St. Mary's Musings at St. Mary's Musings or at stmarysmusings.sbnation.com. So that does it. So Jake, thanks again, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you, Matt.
So I'd like to welcome back to the Southampton Delivery Podcast, Bob Brown. You can find him on Twitter at RSBrown and at the top of last season's FPL fantasy charts. So Bob, welcome back to the show, and thanks for joining me.
Thanks, Matt. Appreciate it. Looking forward to it.
I was joking with Lucy, who is a full-fledged member of the Total Saints podcast now, that you topped the charts in that league last year. You got the trophy. Ben had made mention to it that it came in several pieces. It was like a little puzzle for you and your kids to put together. So I hope you enjoyed that, and congratulations.
Yeah, thanks. No, it was awesome. Got bragging rights for at least one season, and we'll see what happens this coming season for sure.
And we had mentioned, had you done any fantasy sports before this, or was this the first fantasy of any kind?
I've done fantasy hockey, done fantasy NFL, but that was my first season doing FPL. So it was kind of cool. It was a neat introduction into the leagues and actually the Twitter community. I learned an awful lot this year, and I had a lot of success. I was top 1,800 in the world.
Oh my gosh!
This year, and I couldn't have done it without the advice that you got from the people in the online community, for sure. I mean, there's just no way otherwise. But it was pretty cool. It was a good experience, and I'm really looking forward to this coming.
Yeah. It's I somehow wound up finishing last year with I think I still had my bench boost and not my triple captain, but I had my free hit still there. I was like, I don't know what I've done here. So
that's kind of the key with the people from the FPL community. There's so many people who have advice as to when to use all your chips, and they laid it out so easily for me to be able just to follow their advice for the most part. I mean, I still had to make the right decisions and pick the right players and everything. But at the end of the day, without the advice, especially the chips, bench boost, triple captain, all that kind of stuff, I would have been in the same boat as you, for sure.
Yeah, it's totally different because a lot of the American fantasy sports don't have any of that stuff. So it was because I've done like a daily fantasy baseball league, and that's a lot of work. I've done like a pretty deep NL only fantasy baseball league, and then I've done of course NFL. I'm not doing any NFL this year. I've resigned from the league, and everybody's like, "Are you still going to come to the draft?" And I was like, "Well, maybe, because that's the fun part." But
yeah,
we'll see. I'm just gonna have to look at your team then and just do that, because my goal for fantasy for FPL is just don't embarrass yourself. That's me. Finish middle of the road. That's what I will do. I guess. We'll talk about it. We'll talk about it if any of the Saints players this year will make their way into your team, perhaps.
There's a possibility.
So, like I said, people can get in touch with you at RS Brown on Twitter. And we're still talking. We're talking. It's Wednesday afternoon, our time. So Wednesday afternoon, your time. And so there's still plenty of room in the window. Things can happen. So we will see kind of what happens, but we're just going to go on what we have now. And kind of the newest news we have now is that it looks like there's a link for Mario Lemina to go to Everton. How strong it is, we don't know. And also Danny Roll has left the club. I think that's the newest thing that I've seen. So we'll kind of see how that is. But I guess for you, just as we head towards the season, what's been the most impressive thing about preseason, or what's impressed you the most during preseason about the club?
Well, obviously starting off undefeated. I mean, you can't scoff at that for sure. But you know as well as I do, when it comes to preseason, it's not so much about the results, but about the process. Mm-hmm. And I think the big thing here was just allowing Ralph Hasenhuttl to have that full preseason to basically implement his tactics, get the team up to speed. And the way he plays, or he wants his teams to play with the high press and just a lot of energy off the ball, had to make sure that the players are all fit as well. And so we're kind of seeing the results of that reflecting in the scores, and kind of hoping that carries over into the rest of the season for sure. Yeah,
I think like you said, the style of football that Ralph wants to play means that everybody's got to be bought in, and also in the physical condition to be able to do it. Otherwise, injuries will claim you, and we'll have to see how that holds up. I have concerns about specific members of our squad and them being able to sustain that, but we will see. And especially he wants to do this with a smaller squad, which we don't have right now, which maybe we'll talk about just in a second. But I mean, is there anything that stands out as a concern to you as we head towards the start of the season?
Well, I'm pretty sure I'll be in the consensus with the rest of your guests on this podcast and saying, the defense, the back line, specifically the center backs, obviously huge concern. Like you were saying, there's still a little bit of time left in the window. Hopefully we might be able to get something in over the line, but I mean, honestly, even if we were managing to offload Lamina or Charlie Austin or someone of that nature, I haven't heard a whole lot of links to potential center backs. And normally, I mean, you know how it works with silly season, right? I know that's not one of your favorite times of the year. And I'm kind of in the same boat, but you always sort of hear that there's something burning, there's some smoke out there. There's a chance that this player or that player are going to end up coming to Saints. And I mean, just take into consideration last January, there was that link with Che Adams, and then obviously that came to fruition this summer. But I don't know, Matt. I mean, I'm not hearing anything as far as a potential center back. Have you heard anything?
One guy from France, maybe, but he's 18, and
the guy from Monaco, yes.
Yeah, there's a bunch of. We're definitely not the only ones interested, so I don't know. And I look at the players that we have still in the squad, and you look at Wesley Hoot's been getting a significant amount of kind of time and energy. He's been in the picture at least, and so I think because of that may be Ralph realizing that we're going to be stuck with what we have at center back since we have so many, and we're having a tough time offloading them. But maybe if we were able to offload them, then maybe somebody comes in, or maybe if we get somebody in, we're willing to just kind of take a loss on some of these guys and get them off the books. But I think we're probably kind of stuck with what we have.
I would agree for sure.
And
I think
I was going to say, unfortunately, I think that probably means more 3 at the back, more 3 center back formations than the 4-2-2-2 that I think a lot of us would want to see. But I'm sure Ralph will work it out and make the best of it.
Yeah, no, that's exactly what I was going to say. Is our current situation, and let's face it, I think the center backs we have are the ones we're going to have going into the season, and I think that has probably influenced Ralph to move from the preferred formation of the 4-2-2-2 to either like a 5-3-2 or 3-4-3 or something like that. He's going to have 3 center backs, and that obviously, I'm hoping that he's able to organize them. That we can cut down. I mean, even, and I'm going to nerd out here a little bit, but before Hasenhuttl was appointed, 15 games, they gave up 29 goals. So almost 2 goals a match. And in the 23 after that, they conceded 36. So it dropped it down to roughly 1.5. So there was some improvement under him. But at the end of the day, the players we have are the players we have. And there's not a huge amount of quality. But if he can continue to maybe shore things up back there, maybe it's something to look forward to. But that's kind of all we have at our disposal right now. So it is what it is.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely some improvement there, like you said, but then is it enough? Is it enough to, I think you look at teams who finish higher up the table, I think defense, maybe it's a real American thing versus defense first, but I think there are plenty of managers who believe that, but at least he's not going about it as Sam Allardyce would have done, which is nice.
Yeah, for sure.
I'll gladly take the, let's go have fun and watch it and enjoy it. And then if we concede 3 and lose 3-2 or 4-3, and so be it.
Yeah, I'm having a feeling it's going to be very Bournemouth-like, lots of offense, but very weak with some high scores. Which, hey, it's entertaining, right?
Yeah, and that means you get on TV a little bit more too, which would be good for a lot of people in the UK because they don't get to watch as I guess as freely as you and I do.
True enough.
Okay, so jumping into some of these things, I guess if the window closed today, obviously we have issues that are going on, but what rating would you give the club in a 1 out of 10?
Ultimately, you got to kind of look at where we were when the window opened and where, let's say conceivably the window closed today, where we are today. And we brought in Musa Djenepo and Che Adams and basically seen Matt Targett, Sam Gallagher, and Jordi Clasie leave. So are we improved? Yeah, I'd say for sure. However, have we addressed our concerns? No. And obviously, the concern being center back, the market's only gonna play out the way it's gonna play out based on value. And obviously, there are teams out there that do not value our players to the extent we would like them to. So we'll make do with what we have. So having said all that, I would probably still give us a solid 7.
I think that's fair. I think I won't give away what the other people have said, but you're not far off. So
okay.
But yeah, I think there are definite other things that we need to do, but and I think and maybe this isn't the case with you, but I think had we cleaned a little bit more of the squad out, I think the numbers, the scores would be a little bit higher. The ratings would be a little bit higher, because it's going to take probably a number of windows to kind of clean up the mess that we have. But that is what it is, and obviously with a new team in there, hopefully that we are starting that for now. But jumping down a little ways, which player? I think of Nathan Redmond's performance last year, or maybe you could even say Højbjerg, and kind of stepping up and taking the captaincy. Is stepping up last year and kind of finding a positive in the season. What player do you think needs to be really solid for us this season, or really maybe have a breakout year in order for us to be successful, I guess?
If you take a look at the team and you look, normally if you were to ask me that question, I'd instantly jump up to the attack, because that's where I think the difference makers are. However, I think we're doing pretty well up front. We've got some good quality players. We have a lot of depth. Our problem, again, is our center backs. And to be honest, the player that I feel needs to have a really good season for us to have success is Jan Bednarik. Maybe going off the grid a little bit here. But when he was first signed a few years ago, he was sort of looked at as one for the future. And I think we may have shoehorned him into the first team a little bit quicker than what we had intended to. Mm-hmm. But having said that, he has definitely improved by leaps and bounds, and he's impressed a lot of people. And I still think if he can somehow add a little bit more of a leadership capacity, be able to organize things a little bit more at the back, and still continue to make those same strides that he's made in previous seasons, if he can do that, that's going to help immensely.
Yeah, I remember talking to Christopher Lash, who does he's on Polish television talking about football and Polish football, and he was. He kind of said, I think Bednarik's one for the future. He's probably, that's a big fee for somebody coming out of the Polish league, but he's probably not going to be ready for the first team. And then all of a sudden, here he was, being thrown in the first team, and he's established himself, in the Polish first team. So I think I've been really impressed, and I think the defense this season, and if he can continue to improve even half as much as he did last year, I think he'll be huge for us. And hopefully he is the guy that plays on that right side all year long, no matter the formation that we choose. I think he's the guy that gets that. I think everybody else is kind of fighting for that the left side spot, or maybe the center in the left side spot. So
I agree. He needs to bring that stability for sure. Absolutely. They can have some kind of continuity, consistency, at least in one of the areas. Uh-huh. They're going to mix and match in the other areas, but I think as long as we have that one person that can bring, like I said, the continuity, mm-hmm. and they can sort of all play off of, that will be important.
Yeah, and if he locks that spot down, and maybe Valerie on the right as well, then that's a pretty young kind of core of players we have back there to I guess build with, and and grow up and mature a little bit with. So I think that'll be good, not just this season, but in future as well. We talked about success, but what would be considered successful? What has to happen for Saints in this season for you to look at it and say, yeah, that was a good season?
I think, as long as we can kind of trend the same direction, we kind of, whenever Ralph took over, we definitely were trying to be a more entertaining team. More goals were being scored. It was more entertaining to watch. I know some people are looking at upper mid-table as maybe some kind of a goal, but I think as long as we can make a small incremental increase or growth up, move up the table, anywhere in the range from 10 to 14, I think would be reasonable, and I would consider it to be successful. We've got, you take a look at the fixtures right off the bat, they're pretty tough to start with, and I think there's going to be a little bit of an uphill climb after that, but I think it's doable, and I think anywhere from 10 to 14 I'd be happy with. And as long as we don't have to go what we've gone through for the last 2 years, stressing about relegation, and it would just be nice to be able to not really look behind us and just look forward.
Absolutely. I agree with you there. And we'll run through now just a couple of predictions for you in terms of player performance. Mm-hmm. Who do you think is going to be this year's top goal scorer for the team?
I'm going to go with Che Adams. Obviously, when he was being linked to us back in January and then again in the summer, you could sort of see the YouTube videos and see what kind of a player he is. very pacey, a lot of power, very opportunistic. He seems to have a good nose for the net. And, I mean, we were talking briefly about FPL before.
Mm-hmm.
Historically, well, in the last year, I was successful because I basically chose players with my head instead of my heart. And so I didn't have any Saints on my team, barely. I had Danny Ings for a week or two here and Jan Valerie at the end of the year. But I really see Che Adams as being a possible FPL asset.
Okay.
Because I have a lot of faith in what he's going to come up with here. So, yeah, I mean, even the goal that he scored against Feyenoord the other day, a lot of people looked at it saying, you know, that could be the easiest goal he ever scores. But the fact that he had the instinct and the quickness to get to that ball after it was misplayed by the defender and essentially slide tackle it into the net, don't see that very often. So I think he has the instincts. I think he has the abilities, and I think he will be a very good signing for us.
Yeah. I didn't do nearly as well as you did in FPL, but I didn't have very many Saints in my squad either. I think occasionally I wind up with a midfielder because I need somebody who's cheap, and Remy was always cheap, and he's just going to be on the bench, so you do it. But it just probably means I haven't managed my squad very well.
That's nice to have a Saint on the team too, though, right? So
I think the guys from the In That Number podcast are requiring people to have Saints on their team for that team or for that league. But we'll see how many people actually do it. Right. Who do you think is going to lead the team in terms of assists?
In terms of assists, I kind of think that how they set things up against Feyenoord is probably going to be fairly similar to how they set the season up as far as our attack, having Adams, Ings, and Redmond up front. Like I said, Adams I see as being the primary goal scorer, but in terms of creating chances and setting up players, it could go either way between Redmond and Ings. But my gut's telling me that Danny Ings is going to be he's going to form a good strike partnership with Che Adams, and he will be the provider, and Che will be the finisher. So I'm going to go with Ings for assists.
All right. And most minutes played.
Most minutes played. Going to go back to our conversation about Jan Bednarik. Like we said, if he's going to be the bedrock of the center backs there, I think that's where you're going to see most of the minutes accumulate. I think there's going to be a heck of a lot of rotation up front. Because of the way that Ralph plays with the energy that's exerted and the high press and everything. So I don't think anyone up front is going to carry a huge amount of minutes. So I would probably go with Bednarik.
Okay. All right. And then this is the only answer that's gotten the same response from everybody so far. Who do you think is going to have the most yellow cards?
Pretty sure I'm going to say the same as everybody else and say Oriol Romeo.
Just want to get his name in here as many times as I can. But yeah, I can't disagree with you too much. If you had to pick your lineup now for opening day, granted we are still a week away, we still have time in the transfer window and all that stuff. But if you were asked to just pick the starting lineup for Burnley away right now, who would you go with?
Well, based on how everything goes right now, and the fact that we're probably not going to go with a 4-2-2, I'm probably looking at either a 5-3-2 or 3-4-3, depending on how you play the fullbacks or wingbacks. Start in between the sticks, I would go with Angus Gunn. For sure, I think he played pretty well last year when he took over from McCarthy. He had a couple of missteps near the end of the year, but he did play fairly well against Feyenoord. I think he's going to be our first choice, so we're going to go with him. Jan Valerie at right back. And then with the three center backs, Jan Bednarik, Yannick Vestergaard, Maya Yoshida. And at left back, obviously you want to go with Burton, with Brian Bertrand there. Then the two center backs sort of middle of the park, the ball-winning midfielders in our connection between the back and into attack, go with, of course, Oriol Romeo and Pierre-Emile Højbjerg. And then the three players in attack, just like I mentioned, Redmond, Adams, and Ings is the way I think I would set it up.
Okay. All right. I think that's, I think we're getting a theme here, and I think it's, I don't know. I think if Ralph could do the 4-2-2-2 or however many twos are supposed to be there, I think that would be kind of what he's. I think that would be ideal, and then I would be interested to see kind of how that rotation up top works, and who else comes in, and if Ward Prowse plays up there or whatever. So we'll have to see. My one concern with the 3-4-3 is midfield, and will they get overrun eventually? But
yeah, for sure. I think so.
We'll see how it is. I made a mistake on the last episode and I said 3-5-2 and then was talking about midfield, and I meant 3-4-3, but it doesn't matter. Nobody has said anything yet, so we'll see what happens. But Bob, I just want to say thank you for doing this, and it's a pleasure to talk to you. It's been a while, but I know we've spoken on Twitter between now and then. But it's nice to chat with you again.
Yeah, thank you very much. Appreciate the time, and really looking forward to the season. The last year, I think I was a little bit trepidatious about what was going to happen after coming off near relegation. Mm-hmm. I'm a lot more optimistic this year than last year, and I'm really looking forward to the matches. So not far away, so we'll be right around the corner here.
Absolutely. All right. Well, we'll make sure to talk to you soon.
You bet. Thanks a lot, Matt.
I'd like to welcome back to the Southampton Delivery Podcast, the last guest of the season preview episode, Luke Osman. You can find him on Twitter at Luke Osman RS, and I'm sure that you have seen his articles pop up on Read Southampton and other places around the internet. But Luke, welcome back to the show, and thanks for doing this.
No, thank you for having me.
People will have heard from 3 other guests by the time they get to this one, but hopefully we'll be able to bring them a little more. Not a lot has happened since the other people have recorded. Danny Roll has left the club. I think that's it. Maybe Charlie Austin got his Twitter account back, but I think other than that, there hasn't been much happening, unless something has happened in the last 4 hours since I've been asleep, but I doubt it. So there's still a couple days to go in the window. There's still a week and a half before the season starts, but this will be the preview that people get on Tuesday. I mean, just overall, what's been most impressive to you about the preseason?
So obviously it's good to see us go unbeaten in pre-season, and that's always nice, but it's not really what it's about. It's about implementing the new system and getting the players to create a bit more chemistry on the pitch, and the pressing's been really, really good. It's a key part of Hasenhuttl philosophy, and we forced opponents into mistakes and scored a lot of early goals, and I think that is an indication of Ralph really stamping his authority on proceedings and really implementing his style of play.
Yeah, I mean, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I didn't get a chance to watch the last preseason friendly, so not the one against Cologne that hasn't happened yet as we're talking, but the one from the previous weekend against Feyenoord. And Vestergaard mentioned kind of the ability for Feyenoord to bypass the press every once in a while and kind of play through midfield. And I think that's having to do a little bit with I think we deployed a 3-4-3 at that point. And not necessarily on the questions that we were going to go over, but does that concern you, that formation in general?
I think perhaps it could have been down to the lack of a proper natural defensive midfielder. So Romeu obviously wasn't playing in that game, and I think he's quite underrated when it comes to being a bit more press resistant and also ensuring that we don't get bypassed so easily. But I think, this is the first pre-season Hasenhuttl's had, and it is a completely different system to the one that a lot of these players will have worked with. So although they've got the experience of last season, I think it will be a case of sort of making these mistakes early on and then really, really kicking on and ensuring that things like bypassing the press don't happen too often, because against bigger oppositions, it will hurt you.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Because I guess that was not my biggest concern maybe, but one of them. Is there something that stands out as a concern to you looking towards the beginning of the season?
Yeah, I think naturally, and I'd say that this is probably the case for a lot of us, it's of course the defence, and it could actually inhibit us from playing the 4-2-2-2 that Hasenhuttl is believed to want to. I think how error prone our centre backs are is a concern. I think we know that Bednarek has improved, and we know that Vestergaard did towards the end of the season, but we've seen that these avoidable errors continue to crop up in our game, and that is why perhaps pressing from the front and ensuring that we're trying to win the ball high up the pitch, it prevents us from really having to use that defence so often. So you can see why Hasenhuttl's trying to stack the final third of the pitch, but I can see him going with 5 at the back at the start of the season just purely because of how below par our centre-back performances have been. And if we don't sign one of those before the transfer window closes, then I think it's going to limit us this season.
Given that we haven't gotten that center back in, we have done some pretty good business, I guess, early on, even if, early on in this window, if you consider that we were trying to get Jay Adams well before then. But if the window closed today, I mean, given the squad is still kind of bloated, we still have guys hanging around that maybe we would have wanted to get rid of and everything else. If you had to give the team or the squad a rating, or I guess the team a rating in the transfer window, what would you give them? Somewhere 1 through 10, with 10 being the absolute best and 1 being the absolute worst.
I feel a bit harsh for saying this, but at the moment, probably a 5 out of 10. I think that we've significantly strengthened the attack and we're absolutely set in the final third of the pitch, but the defence is exactly the same and we still look pretty weak. And I think a big part of this transfer window was to be shifting the deadwood and really trimming the squad. And we haven't really done that. I know there is still some time left in the transfer window, and of course the European window doesn't close really until sort of towards the end of the month, but at the moment it's been sort of average. And although we can't really complain about how well we've strengthened our attacking options, the glaring deficiencies in our squad still haven't really been amended.
I mean, I'm obviously asking you something to look into the future a little bit, but I mean, there's been almost no real concrete links to a center back or anything else. Do you see that happening, or do you think it's more of an issue of, unless some of these guys go, then we're going to head into the season with the defense the way it is?
I think that it's going to be a case of sort of freeing up some squad space, because at the moment we've got 5 senior centre-backs on the books, and it is too much, especially when 2 of them, Stevens and Hoot particularly, are so below par. But it's also going to be a case of, can we recruit a defender at this stage in the window who will genuinely improve us and will be a player who walks into that first team? So I don't doubt that we could spend 10 to 15 million on signing a centre-back, but 15 million got us Hoot and 18 million got us Vestergaard. So, we need to be certain, Ralph needs to be certain that if we are to spend money on a centre-back, and if we are to get this player in, that he is a significant improvement, because otherwise the same errors will just continue to crop up.
Absolutely, especially given that there's, at this point, there's less than a week of preseason left, and you're going to throw somebody in a backline that lacks leadership anyway, and hope that they can. There are very few of these guys, especially if you look at the age profile that Ralph wants to work with. It doesn't seem all that likely, and it's probably not going to make a lot of people happy. Obviously people are going to be maybe a bit upset about that, but we'll see. Just go through a couple of answers here. You feel free to elaborate if you want, but don't feel obligated. When I was thinking about this question, I was thinking specifically about Redmond and his kind of performance last year. Seemed to galvanize the squad early on. He was kind of really important to us in the early run of the season, and then once again under Ralph. Even though I think Ralph was himself maybe the person who drugged the squad along, even though he wasn't kicking the ball. But which player needs to have a good season this year in order for Southampton to be successful?
I think, exactly the same again. I think it's going to be Nathan Redmond. I think that Che Adams will help us, but we're still reliant on Nathan Redmond's creativity and his ability to sort of create from deep areas. He brings the ball forward so well. His decision-making's improved a lot, and we're so much better when he's in the team. So I think that, again, he's going to be the most crucial player for us.
Okay, that sounds good to me. I still have high hopes for him, and I think maybe all but one fan on the Southampton timeline seems to enjoy his play. We'll leave that there. What would be considered successful this year for Saints, and what should we be what should fans, I guess, be looking at in terms of, in order for the season to be considered a success?
I think first and foremost we need to be well away from a relegation fight. That has plagued us in the past 2 seasons. We need to just be looking towards sort of mid-table. If we can push into the top half, brilliant, but I'm not sure we'll be able to because of our defence. But, as fans, we just want to see good football, pushing for that kind of top half. And the sooner we can get to the point where we can take a sigh of relief and say we're safe, the more perhaps we can look at a cup run. And I think that is the kind of, we are in a position now where I think consolidation sort of between maybe the 10th to sort of 13th place is about where we're at. Mm-hmm. But, let's have a cup run with that. Let's see what we can do. And I think a lot of it is just going to come down to the style of play, given the football that we've been subjected to in the past sort of 2 or 3 seasons.
Yeah, I think just some excitement would be good, and Che Adams scoring early goals and us pressing teams. I think that in of itself, and the guys just having, looking a little bit more fit, looking like they're giving a little bit more effort, I think that in and of itself will take fans a long way. Because getting up at, for me, 4 a.m. to watch a game on TV, if you're going to have to watch 4 a.m. and guys are just parking the bus or just passing the ball sideways, it's not always as exciting as you would like. I guess now let's just go through and I'll just ask you to give me who do you think is going to be the top goal scorer come the end of the season?
I think that Danny Ings is our best striker, but he's probably not our best goal scorer, so I'm going to go with Che Adams for this one.
All right, that's been a unanimous decision so far. What about most assists?
I think a lot of this will depend on the game time they get. I'd say that James Ward-Prowse has probably got the best chance of getting the most assists. I think his vision and his obviously delivery from set pieces is very, very good. But I'd also argue that Nathan Redmond's final balls got a lot better in the past sort of year, so perhaps he's an outside shout for that.
All right, so I'll put them both down for you. On that, I'd just like to ask you, given that Adams has come in, that Djenepo is now at the team, do you see James Ward-Prowse struggling once again for game time as he has in not last season maybe, but the season before, or are we likely to see potentially maybe Romeu miss out or an attacker on the day just be left on the bench to come in late?
I think that it's going to be an interesting one because we have got a lot of attacking options now. So I guess a lot of it will depend on the team we're playing against. Mm-hmm. If they've got weaknesses at, for example, defending set pieces, then it makes sense to play Prowse. But I think he's not guaranteed a place in the starting lineup in the same way that the likes of Højbjerg and Redmond are. Okay. So it's going to be interesting to see where he fits in. In a 4-2-2-2, I don't see him starting in the middle of the park. I see him sort of playing on the right-hand side. So naturally that would see probably one of Djenepo, Redmond, or maybe even Boufal miss out. When it comes to playing five at the back, we tend to play with sort of orthodox central midfielders. So perhaps he could slot in there and then Romeu could miss out. But yeah, he's going to need to start the season well to ensure that he is putting himself in the picture for a place in the starting lineup every single week. Sure.
Guess good problems to have, right? Have guys fighting for spots in the team. Who do you think is going to play the most minutes this season? Outfield players only.
Nathan Redmond for me. I think he's the most important player in the team, and he doesn't pick up too many injuries, which is a bonus. I can't see Hasenhuttl wanting to rest him too much.
All right. And most yellow cards.
Romeu.
Another unanimous decision. So I guess it's I don't know. I think I've said this with everybody I recorded with. I have no idea why I get stuck on the yellow card thing, but I always feel like I need one more, and then that pops up, and then I just know everybody's going to say Romeu anyway. So whatever. From there, can you assuming that nothing else happens in the transfer window, can you give me your predicted starting lineup for Burnley away?
Yeah, so I think Hasenhuttl will go with five at the back because I don't see us signing a new central defender. So Gunn, Valerie, Bednarek, Yoshida, Vestergaard, Bertrand, Højbjerg, Romeu, Redmond, Ings, and Adams.
All right. Well, Luke, thank you so much for stopping by to do this. I know it's the middle of the day. And people can get your writing at Read Southampton, and hopefully, you find time to be able to do that as much as you would like, and I will look forward to it. And I hope you're well.
Thank you very much, Matt. And you.
All right, man. We will talk to you. Actually, we will talk to you next week after Burnley, right?
Yep.
All right, man. We'll see you then.
See you then.
And that does it for episode 134 of the Southampton Delivery Podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope that you've enjoyed it. Like I said, the Premier League window is just a couple of days away, and if something happened, if for some reason we signed a center back between the time that we recorded this episode, the time I went to the mountains, and now when you're hearing it, so be it. We can always hope, but I'm hoping by saying this out loud that it will have happened. There's something about belief and then doing it or something. I'm not sure. I'd like to thank each of the guests for coming on again this week. So Lucy Highnett, who is at Lucy Highnett, Jake Hughes, who is at JJ Hughes, and who you can also get a hold of at St. Mary's Musings, Rob Brown, who is at RS Brown, and Luke Osman, who is at Luke Osman RS. Be sure to check them out. Listen to the podcast that Lucy is involved with, which is Total Saints Podcast. Try to beat Bob at fantasy football, which I don't know how you're going to do that because I'm not that good. But anyway, thank you to everybody for giving me some time, for giving us some time, and allowing the listeners into your heads about what you think is going on with the team. The show would not be possible without you as listeners, so thank you very much, or the people at patreon.com. The small group of people that support the show on Patreon make it possible for you to hear it, so thanks to them. If you would like to get involved with the Patreon community, you can visit patreon.com/SFC delivery, or you can visit southamptondelivery.com and click through the Patreon link there. It all takes you to the same place. If you're interested in getting in touch with this show on social media, you can do that. We are at SFCDELL_IVERY on Twitter and Instagram, and we're at facebook.com/SFC delivery. There's no underscore in the Facebook address. The links to all of those and more ways to listen are on the show website at southamptondelivery.com. There you can like and subscribe and do all of that stuff. You can even sign up for the newsletter that comes out each and every Friday, so be sure to do that. The logo for the show is designed by Matt Beeling. The partner page of the show is the Southampton page. The music for the show comes courtesy of the Free Music Archive at freemusicarchive.org. The intro song is Epic Song by Boxcat Games, and the initial credits that you're listening to right now is Aim is True by Poddington Bear. That's it for this week. We will be back after the Burnley game to kick off another season. So until then, remember that together, we march on. Baby. Baby.
Yeah.
What are you doing?
Taking a shower.
Oh.
Do you need something?
I got a question.
What?
Do you think Southampton are going to be able to sell Charlie Austin before the end of the transfer window?
No. I really don't, babe.
That's not what I wanted to hear.
Sorry. I had hope, but I don't know, that transfer window is closing.
Can I have a kiss?
I guess.